And welcome to the Geeking Poetic channel. I'm your host, Larry Roberts, and we are here for another album ranking episode. Yes, I've done several of these album rankings where I talk about some of my favorite musical artists, mostly from the rock and metal scenes, and I rank their albums accordingly to how I like them. There's no official business. I'm not trying to act like I'm an expert or anything with what I'm talking about here. This is just purely me ranking albums based on how I like them or how often I listen to them. So this is just my opinion. Today, who are we here to rank? I'm going to be talking about somebody who's been in the music news a lot lately because he just did his big supposed farewell to the fans and the industry because supposedly he's done, he's retiring once and for all. I am talking about the Prince of Darkness himself, none other than Ozzy Osbourne.
He's in the spirit of rock and roll, I don't know.
Yes, Ozzy is one of the all-time greats, if not the all-time great when it comes to heavy metal music. I'm a huge Ozzy fan. I have been since I was a kid. You might already know that because I did do a Black Sabbath with Ozzy era album ranking a few months ago, and people responded really well to that. Thank goodness, because again, these album rankings can be contentious. I get that, but again, it's just about personal preference. I thought that it would be cool to talk about the Ozzy solo albums now, specifically his studio solo albums. I'm not going to be getting into any of the live albums, although there are some great ones. I'm not going to get into any of the EPs, although there's some great ones of that. And I am not going to talk about any covers albums he did. So I know that's technically studio, but no, I'm specifically only going to talk about the 12 studio albums he released between 1980 and 2022 of all his original music. This is something I've wanted to get into for a long time now, so I'm really eager to jump into it. But before I do, I also just want to let everybody know that, in my opinion, there are no bad albums. There are no worst albums on here. Sometimes you see people that they do these lists and they go, oh, I'm going to rank them from worst to best. In my opinion, there are no worst Ozzy Osbourne albums. There are just some that I like better than others. But even the album that comes in at number 12 is one that I do enjoy and I do listen to. So don't get too angry at me or think I'm putting any of it down. It's just the way these albums have impacted on me and how often I still pull them off the shelf and give them a listen. So yeah, we've got 12 of them to get through. So without any further ado, let's rank some Ozzy albums.
12.
All right, coming in last place for album number 12, I am talking about 2007's Black Rain. Now, like I said, it's really difficult trying to put something in this position or to rank them in general because there's something I enjoy about every Ozzy album. But when I was being honest with myself and going back and listening to all these albums again, I gotta say that Black Rain comes in last place for me. Now, Ozzy actually sounds great on this album, and the band does too. He had a great band for this album, but there's certain things that I just didn't really jibe with when it came to this album. I don't know how much I really like the production. There's some things they did production-wise and with the mix that I just don't really like. I don't like the overall sound of this album. And there's some choices that they made when it came to crafting the songs and editing up the songs and making them what they are that, again, just for my personal taste, it's not something that I really enjoy. Mainly because there's just too many times on this record that it doesn't sound like a true Ozzy Osbourne album to me. Now, there's definitely a few songs on this album that I really do like hearing, and like I said, Ozzy and the band are firing on all cylinders here, so I can't take anything away from that, but Yeah, I think if this just had more of a classic Ozzy sound to it, especially from the production standpoint, then this one might rank higher, but as it stands, it's in last place for me.
11.
All right, coming in at number 11, we have from 2010, his album Scream. Now, I gotta say, compared to Black Rain, I definitely think that Scream was a step in the right direction. First of all, the production definitely highlights the guitar tone in a better, more heavy, rocking kind of way that feels more true for Ozzy's music. Now, as is the case with a lot of the 21st century Ozzy albums, it's very clear that Sharon and the producers kept trying to push Ozzy more in a direction of being relevant and trying to make albums that sounded more current and clicking with whatever else was popular in rock or even pop music at the time. And sometimes it works great, and other times, unfortunately, I just think it sounds awkward and it's not really, again, true to the Ozzy Osbourne style and his overall persona. Sometimes Ozzy doing more modern sounding stuff really works, and sometimes it doesn't. Thankfully, on this album, there are some great examples of it really working. There's some excellent songs, but overall, this is just not one of those modern day Ozzy albums that I really listen to a whole lot. There's a few songs that make it into my Ozzy playlist, and I'm happy to hear, but as a whole album, yeah, I just don't play Scream all that often.
10.
All right, coming in at number 10, we have from 2020 the album Ordinary Man. Now, when I was going back through the whole Ozzy discography to freshen up for myself before making this ranking, I was really surprised to find that I like this album a lot. Ordinary Man was much better than I remembered it. I'll be honest with you, I listened to this one a bunch when it first came out, but in the last few years, it had kind of just fallen by the wayside for me, and I didn't listen to it too much. And upon listening to it again with fresher ears and a fresh perspective, I think overall this is definitely a pretty strong album. Honestly, I'd say that at least the first half of Ordinary Man is really good. The title track, Straight to Hell, songs like Under the Graveyard are all really cool songs. But I did notice as it was going on that the album started to wane a little bit for me, and by the time it got to the last few songs, I wasn't digging them quite as much as the first half. And some of those songs towards the end, I don't know, they just seemed conceptually to be a little bit silly, or they just kind of felt like filler. Still though, especially for a more modern day Ozzy album, I thought this was like a pretty decent attempt, and I do enjoy this album, but I'm really glad this isn't the album that he ended his career with, because I knew he had something better than this under his belt yet to put out.
9.
Okay, coming in at number 9, from the year 2001, we have Down to Earth. You know, honestly, again, much like Ordinary Man, I hadn't really listened to this album as a whole in quite a while, and upon re-listening to it, honestly, yeah, I dig this album. Now, when it first came out back at the start of the 2000s, I know that for myself and a lot of other Ozzy fans, it was a little bit startling because the sound was definitely a new sound. They were trying to tap into a lot of what was happening in heavy music at the time with nu metal and more industrial metal, and that definitely shows in the production on this album and a lot of the song crafting. And there's some choices they made for the guitar sound and some effects and things they did with Ozzy's voice that are definitely reflective of the early 2000s nu metal style and scene. But overall, I don't think it totally takes away from the album. There's a lot of really good stuff on here. The single Gets Me Through, I thought was a really good song, and even though it did have that modern sound to it, I thought it sounded like Ozzy. And of course, other songs like Dreamer, that is definitely what I would consider to be an Ozzy classic now. And interestingly, counter to what I said about Ordinary Man, I think with Down to Earth, I actually felt that the second half of this album was more interesting to me. There were some of the deeper cuts on here that I really found myself liking a lot, especially upon revisiting this album again. So yeah, I think this is a worthwhile listen. Now, sound-wise, it may not have aged as well as some of the other albums that are a little bit more timeless. This definitely sounds like it's from its time, but it's still a really solid album, definitely worth listening to, and maybe giving it another chance.
8.
Okay, coming in at number 8. Now, this is where things are going to get tricky because most of the albums we're going to talk about here, I know there's somebody that's going to say, dude, that's a complete Ozzy classic. How could you not put that higher? Well, something's got to go somewhere. And again, this is just the way these albums impressed upon me. And honestly, coming in at number 8, I have 1995's Osmosis. Now, I know there are a lot of Ozzy fans, especially those that came up in the 90s, that really adore albums like this. And believe me, there's plenty of great stuff on Osmosis to enjoy. Ozzy had put together a fantastic band on this album. You had Zach on guitar, Geezer Butler on bass, and Dean Castronovo on drums. That is a hellacious lineup, and it does really work on a lot of the songs here. And this is one of those albums where the songs that I really, really like, I am happy to listen to them anytime. But there are songs on this album that I, more often than not, I'm going to hit the skip button. I just don't listen to them that much. And you know, there's no songs on here that I think are bad, but I do think that there's stuff on here that if it was on some other artist's album, I think that it might have been a great song. But it just wasn't quite up to snuff with Ozzy's standards and what we would expect from him. There's just too many songs on here that I could just easily pass on. But honestly, as a musician, just from a musician standpoint, there's some great playing on this album. There's some incredible riffs. The song crafting overall is really, really strong. Some of Ozzy's lyric things are a little goofy here and there, but I mean, it's Ozzy. I kind of accept that, at least to a point. Yeah, I think this is a really, really good album. Not one that I'm going to be mad if somebody wants to put on and play in its entirety in the background. If we're hanging out, that's fine with me. But just compared to the other ones that are coming up, it's not one that I play as often.
7.
All right, coming in at number 7, I mentioned earlier that I was relieved that Ordinary Man was not Ozzy's final studio album, and that leads us to this next one, which is Ozzy's final studio album. I'm talking about 2022's Patient Number 9. And I gotta say, it's not a perfect album by any means, but if this is it, this is the end, this is the final studio album we're gonna get from Oz, I think this is a really, really solid album. And especially when you compare it to most of what else he put out in the 21st century, yeah, this is a great album to go out with. First of all, it's filled with tons of guest players and songwriters. And sometimes when you see that on these albums, you kind of get a little bit suspicious and go, oh, okay, why did they need to pad it with so many guest players and so many guest songwriters? Is it going to be a big hodgepodge, or is it because, they can't come up with anything cool anymore? That is not the case with this album. First of all, you have incredible players, everybody from Jeff Beck to Eric Clapton to none other than Tony Iommi, who plays on 2 songs on here, one of which being the track No Escape From Now, which honestly, again, just my opinion, I think it's one of the best Ozzy solo songs we've heard in the last 30 years. Then you've got Josh from Queens of the Stone Age appearing on God Only Knows, and you've got Duff McKagan, who guest played and wrote a ton of stuff on this album. Yeah, I think that the sum of the parts here really added up to a really great, strong album for Ozzy to go out with. But you know what? This is a really, really great album. And it's not going to be an album that you might ever hold up as being as classic as some of his first albums he put out back in the 80s. But that being said, If you haven't given this album a chance, or if you haven't really listened to it in a while, go back and listen to Patient Number 9, especially now that it's all over and Ozzy's not doing this anymore, and just take in the album and enjoy it for what it is.
6,
All right, we're up to number 6, and I have a feeling that this one is going to irritate some people out there, because this is a really popular Ozzy album, especially for a certain generation of Ozzy fans. And yeah, in number 6, I'm putting 1991's No More Tears. Look, I know people are going to freak out that I put this album outside the top 5, and I know that there is undeniably a lot of hit songs on this album, and this was the one that basically took Ozzy to another level. It brought him into the 90s, and it kept him relevant, and it brought in a whole bunch of new Ozzy fans as well. I mean, the title track, talk about an Ozzy classic. It's such a great song. And then you have songs like Mama, I'm Coming Home, which, especially after the recent performance that Ozzy did at the farewell show, it just takes on a whole new level of meaning and specialness. And yeah, that song definitely went up a couple of notches for, I think, just about everybody. And those songs they're good songs, but for me, it just all leaned a little bit too much into that early 90s epic AOR power ballad kind of territory. And as such, this ends up being an album I don't find myself listening to nearly as much as the ones that are in the top 5. You know, it starts off with Mr. Tinker Train. I know some people love that song. I gotta be completely honest. I never liked that song. I always thought it was kind of corny. The riffs are cool, but compared to other stuff like the title track and some of the other deeper cuts on here, I just didn't think it was nearly as good. But you know, I'll be honest with you. I give No More Tears a lot of props and extra respect because of how important of an album it was in his discography and to his career. And I do acknowledge that this was a very awesome album for him in terms of being a breakthrough success into the 90s. But yeah, I'm sorry. No More Tears. It's just not one that I listen to as much. I'll be honest with you. I think at times I actually listen to Osmosis a little bit more than I listen to No More Tears. But when I was weighing it out, I don't know, the stuff that's really great on No More Tears is just that much more great than what's on Osmosis. So that's why I ranked Osmosis lower, and as such, No More Tears made it to number 6.
5,
All right, we are in the top 5. And yeah, I gotta be honest with you, just like I say most of the other times I do top 5s on here, every one of these albums is absolutely phenomenal. They're all great. Maybe certain weeks, number 5 might be my number 1 and vice versa. So I do exceptionally love these albums that I'm going to talk about here. But I had to put them in some kind of order, and I'll explain why. So coming in at number 5, it is 1983's Bark at the Moon. Man, this is super tough for me because, full disclosure, the song Bark at the Moon is not only one of my absolute favorite Ozzy songs, it's one of my favorite songs of all time. I'm a huge Jake E. Lee fan. This was his debut as the guitar player for Ozzy, and he wrote this song along with Ozzy and Bob Daisley, and it is fantastic. The guitar riffs in this song just, oh my God, they're so important and influential to me personally. I love the riffing, I love the solos in here. It's so good. That alone makes me want to put this album higher. But again, when I went back and I sat down and I listened to this whole album, I realized that there's a lot of songs on here that I just have a tendency to skip sometimes. So Tired is a cool song, but it can be a little bit of a slog, and I do skip that one. But there are other songs that I really love that I don't think get enough attention, like Waiting for Darkness, Center of Eternity. Rock and Roll Rebel was always a great song to play live back in those days. Bark at the Moon just didn't quite add up as a whole, complete album for me when it came to loving enough of it, we'll say, to listen to the entire thing from beginning to end over and over again. But that being said, I do want to say that I feel like Bark at the Moon is a little bit underrated. I've seen other people really write off this album, and stuff that's great on this album is so phenomenally great, it deserves to get more respect than it does.
4.
And speaking of underrated, coming in at number 4 for me, I know this is going to go against a lot of fans' personal preferences when it comes to Ozzy, but I gotta go with 1986's The Ultimate Sin. Man, I gotta tell you, I don't understand why The Ultimate Sin gets the hatred that it does. I mean, I've even seen Ozzy and Sharon put down the album, and I feel like the album kind of gets put in a bad light for the wrong reasons. Like, okay, let's look at the facts. First of all, yes, this was right in the middle of the whole glam metal explosion that was happening in the middle of the 80s. And Ozzy does look pretty bad during this period with all the sequins and all the hairspray and the makeup. It's not the best era for him in terms of image. And being completely honest with you, I do realize that the songwriting and the production on this album did lean into a more commercially viable kind of sound. I mean, they were definitely trying to get on rock radio. They were trying to get more airplay on MTV and sell more tickets. But I gotta be honest, I don't think it was a bad thing on here. The songs are great. The title track is super heavy while being really catchy. Shot in the Dark is definitely a classic Ozzy song, and again, Jakey Lee just shines on this song. Honestly, Jake shines on this entire album. As great as he is on Bark at the Moon, I feel like Jakey Lee took another step or two up when he played and wrote this album. He's excellent on here. Songs like Lightning Strikes Again and Never Know Why, Secret Loser, and one of the songs that I think is really underrated in terms of the more power ballady kind of sounding tunes of Ozzy's that doesn't get more attention that I think it does deserve is Killer of Giants. Again, if you're one of those people that kind of wrote that album off years ago, go back and just try to enjoy it for what it is, because I think it's really, really great.
3.
All right, we're in top 3 now, and coming in at number 3, it is one that, man, I just love this album. Every time I come back to this one, I love it a little bit more. I'm talking about 1987's No Rest for the Wicked. Now, honestly, going back to that time in 87, I was a huge Jakey Lee fanboy. I'd been an even bigger Randy Rhoads fanboy, and I liked Ultimate Sin, but I knew that they were heading more in that commercial direction and people were on the fence about it. So it was a really big mystery as to where Ozzy was going to go next. Was he going to get even more commercial? Who could they get to be the follow-up to Jakey Lee and Randy Rhoads? And the answer we got was this young kid from Jersey named Zakk Wylde. And once I heard Zakk playing and I heard this album, I realized that I had no need to worry. Because right off the bat, honestly, No Rest for the Wicked sounded like a classic to my ears. When I first heard Miracle Man, the first song on the album, I just said, okay, this sounds like classic Ozzy Osbourne to me, while at the same time sounding fresh and new. Zakk came in and definitely had his own personality, while at the same time very much wearing the influences of Randy Rhoads and Tony Iommi and Jakey Lee on his sleeves. Like, he had it all wrapped up there in a ball along with his own personality and his own flair. I thought he was really the best choice they could have possibly made at that time. Yeah, I don't know. This is just a big personal favorite for me. It's one that I love to put on in the car, and I could just let this whole album play over and over again on a long drive. It just never gets old to me. No Rest for the Wicked is a really heavy, awesome Ozzy album.
2.
All right, well, we are in the top 2 here, and I know this is going to be the big question for a lot of fans, because they're going to be like, all right, well, we know what 2 albums are left that he hasn't talked about yet, and how is he going to rank them? Which one is going to be number 1 and number 2? Because this is one of the oldest debates amongst Ozzy fans or hard rock and metal fans in general, as which one is going to be the better one. Well, to be honest with you, spoiler alert, I don't necessarily think either one is better than the other. They're almost kind of like 2 chapters of the same book, but I did have to put them in some kind of order, and I'll do my best to explain why I did it. So, coming in at number 2, it is the debut album from 1980, Blizzard of Ozz. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, neither one of these albums has anything that I can really nitpick or criticize. I love the production on both of them. I love the songs on both of them. The playing on both of them is amazing. I mean, come on. It's got Randy Rhoads. The man is like, not only is he a legend, but he's one of the most important guitar players in my personal life in terms of being such a huge influence on me. And I listened to both of these albums over and over. I still listen to them over and over again, and I've been listening to them since the early 80s. And of course, Blizzard of Ozz has all the classics. It's got I Don't Know, Crazy Train, Goodbye to Romance, Suicide Solution. It is pretty much a flawless track listing on this album. And I really, really love Blizzard of Ozz. But I had to put the other one at number 1. And let me just jump to number 1 now, because that's the only way I could explain myself here.
1,
Yeah, so coming in at number 1, obviously, we're talking about 1981's Diary of a Madman. So look, here's the thing. I acknowledge that Diary does not have the same number of classic Ozzy songs. None of those songs on Diary quite have the same sort of widespread appeal as those songs from the debut album. But when I listen to Diary of a Madman, I hear a man and his band that have evolved. There is an evolution there in terms of the song crafting, in terms of what Ozzy himself is even doing with his voice. And Randy Rhoads, again, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk a bunch about Randy here. He, in such a short amount of time, because there was only months in between when they wrote and recorded Blizzard and when they wrote and recorded Diary. In that little amount of time, Randy evolved even more as a player. There's stuff that he does on the Diary album that he did not do on the first album. When you listen to his writing and his playing on songs like Over the Mountain, and especially songs like the title track, Diary of a Madman, it was just so next level in every possible way. And so while Diary is not the more commercially known and acknowledged album when compared to Blizzard, I just think overall, Diary of a Madman is the pinnacle of the Ozzy Osbourne sound and what that band was capable of. And it's just such an important album to me personally. I do love Blizzard. I think it's one of the greatest debut albums of all time by anybody. But for me, the album that I just constantly come back to and was so important in my life and in my personality as a person as well as just a songwriter and a player, Diary of a Madman is number 1. It's one of the greatest albums of all time. So yeah, I realize this is so hard trying to put those two in 1 or 2. Truthfully, they could both be number 1, but just talking about me, my opinion, my life, my crazy head, that's where Diary of a Madman lives, in the number 1 spot. And that is that. So again, I would love to hear what you think, and not just what you think about my ranking, but I want to know your rankings. Like, first of all, where would you rank those two? Would you say that Blizzard is definitely number 1 and Diary should be number 2? I know there are a lot of people out there that feel that way. How do you feel about the Jake E. Lee stuff? Should that be ranked higher, or is it not as great to you? Zakk Wylde, a lot of his stuff is contentious. Some people think it's the greatest stuff Ozzy ever did. There's other people that do not agree with that. Let me know in the comments, because that's why I do this. I love to hear from all of you out there. It's fun as fans, music fans, Ozzy fans, to share our love of this man and his music and heavy music in general. So I will be back soon with another album ranking. I've still got all kinds of bands that I've been planning on doing. AC/DC, Cheap Trick, Queen, just loads more. Scorpions, UFO. There's a bunch of artists that I still want to get to, and I will eventually. I'll get there, but I just wanted to pay tribute to the man himself in light of his big farewell and going away. And again, if you didn't watch that back to the beginning, man, if you get a chance, go look it up here on YouTube. There's all sorts of clips from it. Man, it's really heavy. It's not just musically, but emotionally. It was really cool to watch. So go check that out and let me know what you thought of that as well. How did you feel about the big farewell? What were your thoughts, good or bad? Just let me know in the comments. I'll be back soon. And yeah, till then, go spin some Ozzy, man. Just go crank it up and enjoy yourself, because that's what it's there for. I'll see you all again soon. Take care.